Okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome our panel of experts and strong women that are out in our community trying to make a more equal world for girls like me. First up, we have Ashley Harris. She is the Director of Government Relations for USAA, where she oversees city and county issues for the 98-year-old organization. Harris has more than 20 years of experience in corporate communications, government affairs, public relations, served as the Director of Industry and Government Relations for Visit San Antonio, where she oversaw the development and implementation of new initiatives as the lead legislation and community affairs. Additionally, she is actively engaged in the community and serves on the board of directors of San Antonio Chamber of Commerce and the Government Affairs Committee. Next, after that, we will have Deanne Cuellar. I'm sorry. Deanne Cuellar is a tech equity advocate and communication strategist. She is currently the Texas State Director of Older Adults Technology Services, OATS, and serves as Mayor Ron Nieberg's digital inclusion appointee to the City of San Antonio's Innovation and Technology Committee. She has co-founded the Media Justice League with Office of Communication Incorporated and grassroots organizations in San Antonio advocating media justice and digital inclusion for historical underrepresented communities. As a young community organizer, she actively organized within the independent music and media community, challenging racist, sexist, homophobic, and classist representations of San Antonians in South Texas communities. She worked with groups to spearhead media monitoring research, media literacy initiatives, and advocate at the local, state, and national levels for systems which provide accurate media representation of local communities, technology-inspired skilled programs, and affordable high-speed internet access. Next, we have District 5 Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez. Born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez is the daughter of Mexican immigrants. She earned her BA and MBA degrees from St. Mary's University and has worked in her family's business for more than 25 years. As District 5's representative since 2013, she has used her experience as a businesswoman and mother of 3 young children in her work as an advocate for city budget and resource equity. She serves as the chair of the city's planning and land development, as well as the transportation and mobility committees. And she also sits on the economic and workforce development, as well as the equity budget and spearhead implementations of Vision Zero strategy district. Oh, I'm sorry. Vision Zero strategy, which aims to eliminate traffic fatalities. Her approach to the most pressing issues in her district has ushered innovative solutions in housing, domestic violence, business development, and the arts. And then finally, but definitely not last, we have Jackie Gorman. Jackie Gorman is a lifelong Girl Scout, former board chair of Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas, and former executive director of SAGE San Antonio for Growth on the East Side. She attributes her Girl Scout leadership experience for her confidence and strength of character. Jackie is a veteran and an award-winning community leader. Active as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and is a founding member of the newly chartered Alpha Xi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She is also a member of the San Antonio Women's Hall of Fame and is also an alumnus of Leadership Texas 2003. Jackie received a BA at the University of Michigan and her MBA at the University of Texas at Austin. Thank you all for being here today. Okay, so to start, we are going to complete one of our social media challenges, which will require you to finish the sentence. I would like for the viewers and listeners to also participate in the challenge and type your answers in the chat on the or answer poll on your screen. Some of the questions to reflect on are, has there been a time or place where you felt like you didn't belong? Have you ever felt that your voice was not being heard or that your perspective was not represented? Have you ever felt confined or upset due to gender norms? And I will let everyone in the chat take a turn of answering, and we will see what we will move on. All right, after we get all these answers in, we will start. We see some yeses. Of course, we hope in the near future to have all these people, all of us women say no. Okay, no, not always. Yes. Yes, I felt that way. Yes to all of them. Well, I for sure have before, especially with the career that I'm trying to pursue. But it's a fighting battle. So. Okay. It's good that some of these are no's. Not recall. I'll read them again just to make sure everyone has heard the questions clearly. So the first one was, has there been a time or place you felt like you haven't belonged? Or, and the second one is, have you felt that your voice was not being heard or that your perspective was not represented? I will ask each of the people on the panel right now to unmute your mics and answer. So I'm gonna I will ask Ms. Shirley Gonzalez, could you answer these questions for me?
Yeah, so great. So thank you. So, one of the questions was, can you recall a time that you didn't feel like you belonged? And so, and I say that I don't recall a time, and I'm sure with a little prompting, I could think of some. But the reason I say I don't recall, because you really do sort of learn from those experiences, and you forget them. Because you're now then moving forward to the next challenge. So even though I know that, there are, I think, times where I felt that way, I'm sure, I think it's normal for women. I just can't specifically recall one. But when we talk about our voices not being heard or not being represented or being discounted, for gender norms, I can think of a lot of times, and those still exist today. I always felt, I think once I became an elected representative, I have to make sure that I am acknowledged in the room. At some point, you just have to make sure that your voice is being heard, even if it means sort of forgetting your polite manners and speaking up first, even if it means that you are not going to get a lot of support. I think after a while, you build up the courage to do it anyway. And so that's why I feel like I can't recall. But, even still today, though we have 6 women on the council, we still are fighting, I think, a lot of gender issues, and also still continue to fight. When I talk about gender norms, one of the things that just comes to mind today, because we took a few days off this week, is how much time I have to spend physically preparing myself, makeup, hair, clothes, all those things. Just that alone we spend a lot of time on. And I wish that I wish I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And those are one of the gender things that come up very often for us as women that of course other men don't have to deal with. And so not only do we have to spend a lot of time doing it, I also spend a lot of time thinking about it, and where we could be thinking about other things.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like you said, we sometimes have to put aside our polite manner, especially since forever we've been grown up to only be polite, to speak quietly. And so I feel like that was very important for you to say. So thank you. Okay, so for the next person to give their insight on these questions, I'd like to ask Miss Deanne Cuyar. I'm so sorry. I'm trying so hard to pronounce it.
It's okay. My internet might be unstable now. It's pronounced Cuellar.
Cuyar.
Thank you, Samantha, and everybody for having me. I just want to proudly say I'm wearing my Girl Scouts split from San Antonio with
Oh
the
yeah.
skyline. This is one of my favorite gifts that another woman in leadership gifted me. And thank you very much for having me. And the one story I would share is that I am mixed. I am half Latinx, and I have a mother who's German, of German descent, but I am a Mexican American, Jewish Latinx woman living in South Texas. And so there have been quite a few times growing up where people have made me feel excluded, not because they did anything specifically mean to me or rude to me, but they might have said something in my company, not knowing that they hurt my feelings or said something that was hurtful. And I didn't always point it out at the time, just because I just tried to come at it from a place of maybe people just not knowing, because if you don't know a whole lot about mixed identity, you might not know that you can still be light-skinned and be Latino, or you could be Latino and have a mother that's German or Jewish. And so what I've learned from that experience is that I try to my best let people get to know me first, and I share that identity and that experience with them, in my hopes that, for two reasons. One is that if they didn't think they had a friend that was mixed or a person of faith, that now they do, and they can ask them questions and I would gladly answer them. And then also I try to leave them with the experience that if they go out into the world and they meet other people like me, that I've left them with a good impression of like meeting another person that might share my identity. So giving them a good start to other people like me.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. So next we're going to have Miss Jackie Gorman. Could you please give us your insight on these questions?
So the one of the three questions, the one that resonated with me the most was, have you ever felt confined or upset due to gender norms?
Yes, ma'am.
And the reason for that is that growing up, there was nothing that I couldn't do. My father was the guy who said, if you drive it, you fix it. So, I turned wrenches. If you want to do it, sure, I'll help you figure out how to do it. But as I became an adult and as I started dating adult men, I can think about the man that I'm involved with right now. He was absolutely horrified the first time he drove up to my house and I was cutting my grass. I'm like, the grass is growing. It needs to be cut. I have all this lawnmower in the garage. Why can't I ride the lawnmower and cut the grass? And that was just outrage. He was outraged by that to this day, but he pays the lawn guy, so I don't care. But I know if it was my money, I would be out there riding the lawnmower. And I think a lot of times our parents instill with us this level of confidence, and we have to be strong enough to maintain that through outside influences trying to change the way that we are seeing ourselves.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Thank you so much. Okay, so next, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Last year, the Statue of Women report revealed many areas of concern affecting women and subsequently us girls. And as a community, we quickly reacted and got to work on issues like domestic violence, earning gaps, and lack of access to technology. But what are we doing to be proactive and ensure the cycle doesn't repeat and support our girls?
So thank you for that question. So because the Status of Women report really did come about. A lot of the women that are on the panel also worked on the Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women, which also helped us to kind of move this issue along. So as we were really starting to understand, well, I hate to say that we're really starting to understand, but what I think is starting to happen is that there starts to be more of an acknowledgement of the fact that women are driving the economy, that women are the primary decision makers, that women are leading in many ways, but where we're not leading is in particular in wage disparity and in wages. We know that Latinas in particular it takes us 23 months to earn this same as a white man in the same job. So we were really starting to acknowledge many of these things in very public ways. And so one of the things that the city is doing, and it's on the ballot for those of you all who are voting eligible. I see a lot of young people here, so maybe you're not eligible just yet, but there is an initiative on the ballot to do some workforce training. And that has to do with not just our education, which would mean, I'll just try to explain it very briefly, but it means that we would pay free college at the community colleges and support services for anybody in San Antonio who needed it. It's a very important initiative. And it also includes all those support services like childcare and rent assistance and also social services. So, I think we took the poverty report and the Status of Women report. There is the racism as a public health crisis initiative that we have, and doing all these things and trying to put them forward to the public in such a way that we could vote on them and hopefully get resources to the people who need them the most. So that was a very just the surface of some of the things that we're doing to try to address the inequities that have happened over the years. We have a long way to go, but it is a part of the work that we've been doing at City Hall.
Okay, thank you. So I could also open this question up for the rest of the panel. So I'm gonna slide over to Ms. Jackie Gorman. Could you give me your take on the situation right now based off the question? Oh, ma'am, you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I got it now. Okay, so, and I know this is one of our questions we're going to talk about later, but COVID has so disproportionately impacted women and girls. And I don't think that, and we won't even talk about people of color, women of color, and we just want to talk about that right now. But when you look at the people who are disproportionately getting COVID, those who are exposed, but more importantly, those people that we called essential workers a few months ago that we don't want to pay a living wage to. I think we have to be honest with ourselves as a society and look at the things that we value in the services and jobs that we value and really reevaluate that.
Okay, thank you. If anybody else from the panel would like to pitch in, please feel free to do so. And if not, we could move on to the next question. Okay, so, all right. So the next question is for Mrs. Harris. So Ms. Harris, I'm sorry. Okay, well, yeah, this is tying into what Ms. Gordon said. Now let's talk about what's currently happening, COVID-19. It's affecting the women the most, especially African Americans and Latinas. Ms. Gorman, can you talk about it, more long-term effects that this can have in our community and how the impacts can develop for girls like me?
Sure. I think one of the biggest long-term impacts of COVID outside of the health impact on women and girls of color is the financial insecurity that goes along with that. And one of the biggest things that I am worried about is housing insecurity. When people are not secure about where they're going to sleep, when children can't stay in the same school for the entire school year because they're moving due to evictions, then we have a real problem. And it was a problem before COVID, and the issues that are being raised economically by COVID is just going to make this problem so much worse. And like I said before, those folks who are doing those low wage jobs that a couple of months ago, they were critical. Those are the people who are being impacted the most, so COVID has not had that much of an impact on me. I work at home anyway. So, my clients have gone away, but I got other things that I do. So it hasn't really impacted me that much. But for those who don't have the luxury of being able to take their job home with them, this has had a serious impact on them. And long term, girls are going to be impacted by this because school has changed. And unless you have the technology to keep up with it, you're going to get left behind. And the technology could be the computer, or it could be somebody in your house that understands the computer enough to help you. There's just so many after effects that we don't even know about. We will be dealing with the impact of this pandemic for generations.
Thank you. Okay, so if anyone else on the panel would like to give in their 10 cents about this topic, please feel free to. I could wait a few seconds if someone wanted to.
This is Ashley. I kind of want to jump in and just absolutely cheerlead what Jackie just said. Since September, since COVID, through September, 865,000 women have dropped out of the workforce. Now, if you compare that in the same time frame to the 216,000 men who have dropped out of the workforce, you can see that there's a very significant impact on women. And to the councilwoman's point, that's the reason why this workforce development program that the city is putting on the ballot right now has a stipend for for childcare. Because we women, we're the one that's disproportionately impacted by this, and there's no place to put our children during this. And so if we're going to go back and upskill these women into these better paying jobs, that childcare component is a critical portion of that.
Yes, 100%, especially the way things are now. It seems like it's getting worse and worse. But if anyone else has their, okay.
I'd like to add a little bit to what Ashley said as well. COVID-19, and I also agree with Jackie, and I agree with all of the panelists, actually, what's already been said. 1 in 4 families in San Antonio did not have all 3 legs of the stool when it came to digital inclusion and digital divide, which means you had to have had affordable or free high-speed internet access, a computer that could use the internet access, and then you had to have the digital literacy to use all of the virtual environments, go online. And so that is a huge number for the city of San Antonio with a city of our size. When you just start with the people who are public school educators, 1/3 of them are over 55 years old. And a lot of them were forced to choose whether or not they were going to go into early retirement or take the risk of going back to school during the uncertain times, right? It's not like school started, 24 hours ago. There's a calendar of knowing when people have to go back to school. And so right now, what COVID-19 has done, it's unfortunately what it's done, but it's thrusted this use of technology and the role that it plays in the quality of life into mainstream media because of a pandemic, which is very unfortunate. And so we know now that there's multiple tools, what the panelists are saying, right? There's multiple resources that women and just everybody in our community should have access to, just so that the quality of their life is a certain way and a certain standard, and access to water, access to housing, access to the internet is part of that. And it's also it's also just not through K-16 programs, right? Being able to work from home, like Ms. Gorman mentioned, not everybody has that luxury. right? And so what are the systems that need to be in place in order for people to work from home, and what are the systems that need to be in place for those who can't work from home? And then you have that, so the workforce that needs to work from home or who cannot, we need to ask them what they need. And then you have older adults, the senior citizens and the elders in our community. Just as the number is really similar to the amount of K through 16 students and older adults who are also dependent on using technology. Difference being is that you all as youth might have grown up with technology, whereas someone like my father, you know, it was something that was introduced to him later on. And so there's an entire group of people, generations of people that we're now trying to bring onto the online environments just so that they can like continue their life, see you all, their grandkids, access their telehealth, and then also like join us online so that they can stay in touch with friends and family. So COVID has opened up, like Ms. Gorman said, you know, we'll be dealing with this issue for a while. It's not going away anytime soon. But I will say this, and I'll stop talking. We've been trying for a really long time to make sure that women in STEAM and STEM were centered and at the forefront of working on these issues. And we are modeling that in San Antonio. The women who work on STEAM and STEM who have those jobs now, and those of you who we'd like to recruit, those of us who are doing it now are modeling it for you all, and we want you to join us. And those of us who are doing it now are working on it now, and we're waiting to work on it with you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, if anybody else has their 10 cents, and if not, then we can move on to the next question. So Ms. Harris, okay, Mrs. Harris, I finally got to you. During this time, there have been many discussions and decisions that affect girls, like school reopenings, but I haven't seen that we are included in any of those discussions and decisions. How can we work together to provide a space where our voices and solutions are at the center of our community?
That's a great question, and I kind of want to differentiate that out a little bit. I think San Antonio has done a great job on making sure there are women at the table. You know, we have a majority council. The head of Metro Health, the assistant city manager that oversees Metro Health, is a woman. The interim Metro Health director is a woman. The woman that actually oversees the return to school committee, Dr. Jinda Wu, is a woman. So I think we've had a great buy-in from women on the COVID-19 return to school process. But I think where we see that start to taper off is at the state and federal levels. And, you know, there's a significant gap there. As a matter of fact, Representative Ina Minhada just wrote a great op-ed earlier this week on how it's time for women at the state level to step up and start taking those leadership roles. So, and I completely agree with that. So to answer your question on what we need to do, I constantly go back to an expression that I love, and it's from Tigger, yes, the cartoon character, and it's, we will either find a way or we will make one. And so I strongly encourage you to raise your hand. And if you want to be in a space, be there. That kind of goes back to that question that we asked earlier about, has there ever been a time when you felt that, you know, uncomfortable, or, you know, you didn't feel like you belonged? Well, you know what, at least for me, that happens all the time. I'll walk into a room with CEOs in the room, and I constantly feel like I don't belong. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it puts kind of a hustle in your step and makes you want to prove that you belong there. And so I think that's a great thing to kind of have that fish out of water feeling. But where it comes wrong, where that turns wrong, is when you let that fear keep you from taking your seat at the table. And you know what? If there's not a table, that's fine. Go and create a table. You know, I think the councilwoman will tell you that half the committees the city has is because someone raised their hand and said, you know, I think we need this. So if you think you need it, raise your hand and say, I want to do this. You know, you mentioned the return to school, or really honestly any issue that you think needs to be addressed. There's of the top 5 chambers of commerce in San Antonio, 3 of them are led by women. So reach out to them and say, this is an important issue and I think it needs to be addressed. And I'm here to tell you, there's not a woman alive that it wouldn't go, I would love to help you do that, find that, create that solution. Let's put together a committee. Let's all sit down at the table. So don't be afraid to speak up and raise your hand. You know, it's scary, and a lot of times it puts you outside your comfort zone, and you're just going to have to face that fear and just do it. You know, be scared, but do it anyway.
Thank you. So we'll open up this question also to the other panelists who'd like to take their opinion on the decisions that us women should be able to make with the reopening of schools during COVID-19 or generally any situation. So we'll let the panel open up for anyone to put in their comments or ideas. A moment, and if anybody doesn't.
Oh, come on, ladies, throw in your ideas. Come on.
So, I know that the issues of opening the schools have been like so fragile. And I mean, I know that as, first of all, a mother of young children, but almost everyone I know and all the children, my friends' children, live with in multi-generational households.
Mm-hmm.
I live in, my mother lives with me. She lives next door, but we basically live together. My children's friends, many of them live with their grandparents in the Edgewood ISD, which where you guys are in Edgewood. Something like 30% of the kids are being raised by grandparents, and we know that the virus has been more fatal for older people and for people that have previous health conditions. And I am so afraid for our community. Jackie mentioned early on about people of color being disproportionately killed by the virus. And so I really do think that this is something that we really just have to listen to the science and then slowly, carefully, thoughtfully start opening the schools. And I know, I suspect that, some of your organizations, I see Leah here, and then you all here at the Girl Scouts and others are doing things to help supplement the learning, especially because of the digital divide that we experience in our communities. But I'm very reluctant to weigh in on the best strategy to reopen the schools because of how afraid I am for our kids to perhaps be in a situation where they are they end up orphaned. I mean, it truly, like, I mean, it could bring me to tears if I think about it too much, because I bet, I look at some of you guys and I see some families that may be multi-generational.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like we're doing good. I know the kids are starting to go back. I know that, like, I have one child who's very social, and it's really important for him to be in a school setting, like back to some sort of interaction with kids, with masks, with dividers in small cohorts. I even had asked early on, like, could we use some of our delegate agencies, some of you all, to help do some of those cohorts if the kids couldn't go back to school, if we could find ways to keep it small. And I think perhaps some of you all are doing that. But it is a request I have into our city budget, even, however that looks, whether it comes from whatever kind of funding we can allow for some organizations to take on these small cohorts if we need them. And it seems like very slowly, I think we're okay. And I don't know what that looks like in the future with flu season. My kids already had the flu, not the flu, but got a cold in the last few days and immediately had to go get tested. Turned out to just be a cold, but as all the moms on the call know, it gets very scary. So everybody's vomiting, there's diarrhea, snotting, the usual things that normally wouldn't really give us any pause. We give them like a little bit of Tylenol and, take a couple of days. But so I'm very nervous about it. And I think we have to listen to the science and just be really cautious.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So Now I want everyone to take a minute to think back to when you were children. What were your dreams? Let's get it a little bit more what is it? Exciting up in here. What were your dreams? What did you want to be when you grew up? And what, if anything, would make you change your mind? Please comment it in the chat, and this will lead me to ask my next question. All right. Miss Kular, I've heard statements like that's for boys when it comes to certain careers like mechanics, construction, and technology. What can we do to eliminate discrimination and expose girls to these industries and training programs so they can choose their future?
Well, I'm gonna give you a little bit of everything based on all the questions that I hope also answer that question. I often get I experienced discrimination and I navigated on a day-to-day living in San Antonio. People say they don't like the tone of my voice, they don't like my short hair, you know, they misunderstand like my direct communication for being bossy. We don't see men being held to that same standard. They don't get accused of being bossy. They don't get told about having short hair or long hair as often as I do. I love my hair. I love the way they look. That being said, I also remember being a teenager in high school and being asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, oh, I want to work in media or technology, or I even said something like maybe music. And I remember every person that asked me that question telling me like, oh, you can't do that. They literally said, you can't do that, or that's not possible. Or they would say, that's just really hard. And that for some reason that challenged me to just want to like prove them wrong. And the truth is, in most of those environments, it is also still very much dominated by men. And what I do is I find the other women in those spaces and we lift each other up and we take care of each other. And also just to throw back a little bit to what Ashley was saying and the rest of the panelists is like, you all are in very unique positions right now, whether it has to do with COVID, virtual classrooms, or building a bench or a committee that doesn't exist with what you're doing right now. The next generation of digital inclusion is tech equity. And so right now you could get with your friends, you could get with your peers and your mentors and the adults in your life, and like what does a media literacy task force at my high school look like so that there's no misinformation, right, about public health? Like how do we prevent that, like at school? What does a digital inclusion task force look like so that the students can work with the parents and administrators to make sure that they know from your point of view what you need to attend class at home? Maybe a lot of us are not showing up to school because we don't want you to see like what it looks like, where we live. Or if you want to like carry on with like what the Girl Scouts really cares about leadership, like what does a net advocacy task force look like? How can you like work together with your peers to make sure that that like how we are using technology, that we're always putting our best foot forward with that cyberbullying or cybersecurity or online privacy. So there's lots of ways that I think that you all could really get involved in this issue. And there are a lot of people in the city of San Antonio who would want to help you do that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're cutting it kind of close to the time, so I'm gonna just speed it up a little bit. But a quick question for the chat. Please, I'm sorry. Where is it? Oh. Okay, viewers and listeners, what do you think? What do you think? Are you guilty of thinking or saying phrases like "that's for boys"? Please answer on the poll on your screen, and if you wish, provide details in the chat. So just what is your overall opinion on the phrase "that's for boys"? Or it's like, do you feel guilty of thinking it? Or have you ever thought of it? Me personally, I don't think I've ever thought of it because my mom taught me, she raised me just like she raised me and my older brothers. She had anything I could do, I could probably do better than them, so. All right, so if everyone can put in their opinions in the chat, and once you're finished, we can move on. So I'm gonna try to move on real quick to the next one. And this next question is for Councilwoman Gonzalez. You are an inspiration. As a Latina woman, you won your seat and broke all stereotypes by becoming a mother of 3 children while serving your city and transforming District 5. How can we provide skills and knowledge to girls of all backgrounds so they can become change makers and leaders in our community just like you?
So, you know, I think the most important skill that I learned through this journey is to ask for help. And maybe that sounds like a little bit not exactly the message that you're looking for. And it's funny, I get asked questions like this a lot, and I think I changed it every time, kind of based on how I'm feeling at the moment. But learning to ask for help has been, I think, the only way that I've gotten through. I mean, in fact, I even feel emotional at the moment because, like many of you all here, like I look at the girls that I can see on the screen, motherhood can be really lonely, and it's especially lonely with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you all have felt, I suspect, if you were like me, have been really lonely during this time. And so when I talked about the cohorts, I do see, gosh, I'm getting so emotional, but I see, you know, a person here asking about the cohorts and what that means. And so having a cohort just meant that you had a small group of people who you knew were not necessarily interacting in big crowds, and that either you would take turns taking on a lesson, or maybe you would take turns, you know, sort of doing play dates, but on a very small scale. But I have had so much help along the way, whether it was, you know, from help with babysitting. My husband is an incredible support, and I could go on and on about having a great partner. I think that as also, you know, a grown woman now, nearly 50 years old, I finally, like in my 40s, like started to learn to ask for help. And so I hope that you all as young people learn very on the skill of asking for help from trusted sources. Like, I mean, you can't just ask anyone because then you won't really get what you need. But I hope that you learn that early in your life so you don't have to suffer when you get older with asking for help. And that's my answer for today. If you ask me, you know, months from now, I might give you a different one, but that's what's coming to mind today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to, we're going to move on to another question. This is the second to last question. It says, let's talk about gender norms. A common one is that women and girls are expected to serve the men and do most of the domestic work. Ugh. In many cultures, they call it being respectful. Ms. Gorman and Ms. QR, would you consider this a negative cultural practice? And if yes, how can we at home start eliminating it?
I absolutely think it's a negative cultural practice. It was one that my mom did not tolerate when I was growing up. Actually, I have younger brothers. When I left and went to college, I came home one weekend and there was craziness going on in the house. I'm like, what's up? And evidently they had done something to make her mad because she was like on strike. And my brother was sitting in the hall with the sewing machine trying to sew up a hole in his pants. And my dad was in the kitchen cooking. But I know I come from an unusual family. And we can see the impact of gender norms when we look back at what Councilwoman Gonzalez said about the number of women who have dropped out of the workforce. And what Ashley said, why are they dropping out of the workforce? Because the kids are home. Mm-hmm. And it's the woman's responsibility to stay home and take care of the kids. You know, it doesn't matter maybe that woman is the one who's bringing in the most income, but those are her babies. So she's the one who's responsible for doing it. And I think that's unfortunate. And, you know, it is a cultural thing, and it's particularly prevalent in the African American and Latino communities, you know, and it's just something we have to grow out of. But I'm going to say, in defense of our brothers, when you are in a situation when you have so little power over your life, you tend to want to grab that power wherever you can. So our mothers and our grandmothers, in support of the men in their lives who were being beat down by other policies that we're not here to talk about today, they may have gone over a little far to the other side to try to give them some sense of having power in their household. And so we always have to be mindful of what they're going through as well. But it's definitely not a positive thing for our girls.
Yes, okay. So Ms. Gular, would you like to put in any insight with that too?
I agree with everything Jackie said. I'm also lucky that I was raised by parents who, you know, treated, you know, equal opportunity punishment and chores and who did what to keep the household going. And I also live in an, you know, in an equal opportunity chores and keep the household going environment with my husband. You know, I don't say that either of us does something just because like he's a man and I'm a woman. And we ask a lot of questions too. That's just something also to just take to your household is like, you know, what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? And I also just think that gender norms are out of style and off trend. And that's not the world that we're building. And that's not the world that most people want to live in anymore.
Exactly, yes. It's not a trend anymore. It's no longer cute. So final question, Ms. Harris, you have helped lead the San Antonio 19th Amendment Centennial Committee for a few weeks ago. What are we doing, or what can we do as a community to promote and protect girls' rights? And what is one thing individuals and families can do to empower their girls in their everyday life?
That's a great question, and I actually loved how you phrased that because you mentioned the families, and I think this all starts at home, and that kind of goes back to what Deanne was just saying and what Jackie was just saying. You know, this equality begins at home. So it's asking your daughter, hey, I know you can't vote, but when you do get to vote, how do you think you'll vote on this? Or what's your opinion? Or how did that make you feel? And it goes back to engaging our daughters and engaging our children and making their opinion make them feel like their opinion is valued. And that truly does start at the family and start at the home. And then the woman takes the young girl takes that forward into her own marriage and into her own children. You know, and I'm here to tell you, I promise you, my husband has done just as many dishes and changed as many diapers as I have, because that's how that's the standard I set for myself. And you know, my husband, when you seek that out, that's what you find in your relationship. And my boys have seen that. You know, they see, well, mom and dad are equal partners, and so that's what they're going to seek out for themselves when they go for their own relationships. And I hope that that's what girls seek out for themselves. So I think that's how we really start doing that change, and that shift, that cultural shift is women and girls have to start, you know, taking that. I had a friend of mine and she got married right after I did. And I mentioned to her, yeah, you know, I cooked and so Denny cleaned. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah, how is it in your house? And she goes, no, I cook and I clean. And I'm like, no, demand the reality that you want, right? Nobody's gonna give it to you. So you're just gonna have to go and take it for yourself.
Exactly. Look, my mom raised me the exact same way. My brothers were cooking and cleaning before I was. So, all right. So thank you guys so much. So for the end, we have an audience question. If parents have both young daughters and sons, should parents include their boys in these conversations as well? How do we address gender inequality to boys so they are also aware? So if the panel would also like to give their last 10 cents in, or if the chat would like to ask some more questions, feel free to go ahead and I'll let the panelists have the floor.
Well, as a mother of two boys, I'll actually jump in and say, yeah, absolutely. You need to raise both women to demand their equality, but you also need to raise your boys to treat with equality. And, you know, actually on the way home, from picking my son up from school today. He said a panel on gender, on women's equality. Well, what about us men? And I'm like, okay, look, I said, you have me as a mother, okay? And so all you do is you see me out, you see me engaged, you see me moving and going in the community, but I'm here to tell you that's the exception rather than the rule. And so what we're doing on these panels is trying to make it the norm, trying to make it the rule, trying to get girls to understand that they need to raise their hand and demand their seat at the table. And so boys and girls need to be taught that lesson.
Yes, okay, thank you. Anybody else has their last few cents to put in? Please don't hesitate to. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Well, so I just, my children are still little. So, I mean, I'm still in the diaper changing. I still was like trying to get one potty trained. But, I think the biggest issue that comes to mind for me my hope is that they'll learn by example a lot of these things. Is, they'll learn from their parents. But like my biggest concern for my boys in particular is regarding consent. And that's something that I feel like, we ever did talk about. And I think for you all, for the young people, we have to figure, and I don't have an answer. I've been sort of struggling with it myself. There are simple ways that we do it, in the household, but I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had a bit more broadly. And I would actually like to challenge some of you all that are doing that work with Leah and perhaps they're at the Girl Scouts. I mean, it has to be not just with girls, right? I mean, we have to have the whole conversation, but I would like to really understand how we do that. Truly, I don't know. I'm almost like pushing it back on you all because I need help with how I talk to my children about consent, because I think it will come fast. We know that because of the social media that surrounds everything, and perhaps they're going to learn things a little bit faster than we did. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's a really important piece that I would like for us to have conversations about. So I'm like, rather than me answering, I'm putting it back on you. Have a community discussion about consent with boys and girls.
Yeah.
Councilwoman, I'll jump in. I'm here to tell you that I have told my boys that if they ever raise their hand to a woman, they better pray the police gets to them before I do.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
I think we should have a conversation about letting your voice be heard and not be afraid of how people are going to react to you. And I think about that, and this is not a political statement, but some of the words that have been used to describe Senator Harris, some of the words that have been used to describe Congresswoman AOC, an assertive woman, and especially an assertive Black woman or an assertive brown woman, we all of a sudden we become the angry Black woman or the angry Latina woman, when really we are just being assertive and pushing forward our thoughts and our voice. And that really worries me, that the discourse that's going on in our country now are going to make some of you young ladies be afraid to speak out. And if there was anything that I could say to you, is this: don't ever be afraid to speak out. Don't ever let anyone take your voice away. That's the most powerful tool that you have. And that's the one that they will go after first. So never let that happen to you.
Yes. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna climb down off my soapbox right now.
I'm going to throw an amen on there. I think that's what Jackie just said times 1,000. Amen.
Yes, that was great, guys. It's like, growing up is like, there was no real talk of equality in my house because like my mom's a single parent and my brother's been watching her do it all. So it's kind of like it's kind of like an underlying, we don't have to speak it, but we know it's there. Like we know that there's an equality because she could do everything that a man can do. And she can go out in the yard and she can cook and clean. She'll she'll be working like 7, 8, 9 hours a day and then come home and clean and cook and talk to us and like make sure we're up to date, we're okay, she's just very engaged. So a woman can do it all. So thank you guys so much. So thank you guys so much for the panel, for sharing your knowledge and your expertise with us. So thank you for everyone. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the group chat. But if we don't, I would like to say thank you to the panel and thank you for everyone for sharing your Friday afternoon with us and participating in this discussion. Reminder that there's a recording of this event on our social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Also another reminder, you still have time to complete your Day of the Girl Scouts social media challenge, like challenging yourself to run or walk 1.1 miles for every girl in your life. And with me, that'd be a lot of miles. I have a lot of women in my life. Or this is a great opportunity to start conversations about gender equality and norms with your children, your partners, your friends, and your family, and your students as well. You can also wear and show us your Vote Like a Girl tee. So there's a Vote Like a Girl tee on the website of the www.dayofthegirlsa.org. As you can see right now, this is the website that's up on the computer on the screen. And yeah, just like send us a picture of your Vote Like a Girl tee. We'd love to see it. Remember to snap a picture of you wearing it and share for hopes of future generations of female leaders. Don't forget to use hashtags, #GirlEquality, #DayOfTheGirlSA. You can also show us who you want an equal future for by sharing a picture of you and the girls in your life. Don't forget to include what you are doing to help her achieve her goals and challenge 11 friends by tagging them. Spread the word. It's good to give it to your friends, spread it to word of mouth, or go on social media if you have a nice following. To close off the Day of the Girls celebrations, the whole family is invited to celebrate the Girl of the Day as we rally together for our future. This event will be an interactive drive-through tomorrow, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the San Antonio Shrine Auditorium. And if nothing else, so I'd like to say thank you so much for letting me be your moderator. And so thank you and have a wonderful weekend. It was nice to meet you guys and thank you for your insight.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Samantha. You were awesome.